everyone, and welcome back to another Tokyo Ghoul re-discussion. This time we're going to be talking about a topic I was going to talk about a while back, but I decided I wanted to do a bit more research and present to you guys something a bit more grand in scheme than what I wanted to just be talking about. So basically, the title of this video is, does Shikorae / Ryu have all 4 Kagune types? But also, I want to ask the question, if this is true, what is the significance to this being possible? So, before I begin, this video is going under the assumption that Shikorae is real. So, I'm making this video as if the Shikrae theory is actually true. If you have not heard of the Shikrae being real theory and you do not know who Ryo actually is, I have actually 3 links to in the description down below that you can check out. The first one being the Tokyo Ghoul wiki, where you can see it'll take you straight to the Tokyo Ghoul Jail game, which is a game released for the PS Vita, and you can basically read the synopsis and find out more about Ryo and the story in and of itself. The second one is a link to one of Chibi's videos where he talks about Ryo being tortured to the point where he becomes Shikrae. And then the third one is a Tumblr post that basically connects all the dots on how Shikrae is Ryo. So most likely there's like a 99% chance that Shikrae is real, because there's just obvious evidence out there, and this video is just going under that assumption. But we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about something else that has been proposed and brought up from chapter 63 specifically of Tokyo Ghoul Re. So in chapter 63 of Tokyo Ghoul Re, it was noted that not only Shikorae's Kagune is similar to Ryo's, but Shikrae might have all 4 Kagune, just as Ryo did in Tokyo Ghoul Jail. In this video, we take a look at the evidence and ask if this is true and if there's any significance. Okay, so in the game, if there's one thing you need to know about in the game, is that you don't have all 4 Kagune. You choose to have one of the 4 Kagune in the game, so it gives you that option. But because it's presented to you that there are all 4 Kagune in the game, and from the evidence that I brought up here, it might be possible that it is canon that Ryo has, or Shikrae has, all 4 Kagune. So let's take a look here. Alright, so first off, let's start with page 6 of chapter 63 of Tokyo Ghoul Re. So on page 6, the second to the this is Ryo, and then this is Shikrae. So on page 6, the second to the last panel, we see Shikorae's Kagune, which is a Bikaku, after stabbing Hachikawa in the back. If you notice the design of his Bikaku, and then take a look at Ryo's Bikaku in the Tokyo Ghoul wiki, or if you've seen it in the game, the optional one that you get, this is how it looks like. You can note that they are almost exactly the same in terms of design. You can see the veins popping out, which is something common in a lot of Bikaku, but just the way that it's formed and the way that it's stylized and the way that it's overall designed, it's very, very similar to each other. So that's one thing you can note from that. And just the way you can even see, kind of in a way, kind of reaching, but the way in his stance is doing, the way he's going about his stance, it seems like sometimes, if you've noticed in the series, the Kagune is kind of like a reflex thing, because someone's Kagune is like a predatory organ, so it comes out of reflex. And I think that depending on how you act, Ghoul can manipulate their Kagune, but it seems like it moves dependent on how your actions are. So just by looking at their stance, you can kind of note that it is a lot similar, and it's acting kind of similarly as how Ryo is in Tokyo Ghoul Jail. So also, we take note at Shikorae's face in the last panel of page 6 of the chapter. You look at him right here. You can take a note at his eyes. So he's got veins popping out of around his eyes, and they're very, very noticeable. An interesting thing about Ryo is that when he would activate his Kagune, he would have the exact same facial feature where his veins would protrude out of his face in a very abnormal way, which a lot of ghouls have that, but it's not to this point, not to this extremity, because a lot of the times it just surrounds the eye. It does not surround the entire face, whereas we see with Shikrae and Ryo, it seems to surround a lot of the person's face. So it seems like a lot of the veins are in the person's face, or in Shikrae's face, come out and pop out of his eyes, and it's a feature that is not only common in Shikrae, but it's also common in Ryo as well. So that's another connection you could point out. Another thing is in the following page, page 7, we get to see Shikorae's Kagune, okay, again. And he proceeds to attack Mitsuki and Hogi by launching these spike-like projectiles at them. This time around, though, his Kagune looks entirely different from the first time we saw it. It looks like he has multiple Kagune. So take note the resemblance between his Kagune right here in this page and Ryo's Bikaku, okay, which is a different Okaku, which is a different Kagune than the Bikaku, because this one comes out from the, I think it's the middle back, if I'm correct, and this is one in where it's almost entirely similar. And another interesting thing to note is Bikaku, from what we know, Ukaku, from what we know of, are the only Kagune we've seen, as far as I can remember, that has that ability to be able to shoot projectiles at its opponent or at its victim or whatever. Whereas the Bikaku, the Rinkaku, and the Kokaku don't have that specific ability. And so that's another thing to note, where we saw Shikorae launch these projectiles at Mitsuki and Hogi. It's something that is very common in a Ukaku user. So that's another connection you can point out as well. And also take note at the circle, the yellow circle in the bottom. It seems to me like that yellow circle where I highlighted it, that figure behind his back is his other Kagune, which it would be his Bikaku, as you can note right here. So it seems like he has multiple Kagune sticking out. Now, that's another connection you can have with Shikorae and Ryo as well, but it seems to highlight that Shikorae might possibly have all four Kagune. And as you can see there, it seems like he has 2 Kagune that are active at the moment. Another interesting connection is in chapter 38 of Tokyo Ghoul Re. We see Kaneki right here when he confronts Uta, and this is before the other investigation where they dressed up as ghouls, where him and the Qs dressed up. Well, they didn't dress up as ghouls. Yeah, they dressed up as ghouls and they wore masks. We see Heise holding a specific mask when he tells the Qs we're becoming ghouls. This mask is the mask that Ryo wears when he is in his Rinkaku mode. When you choose to have a Rinkaku with Ryo, that is the mask that he dons. And so if this is a true connection, I believe that it's referencing that, at least in my opinion, it references that Ryo has the Rinkaku as well. If we're presented the mask as a slight, little Easter egg in the story of Ryo's Rinkaku mask, but all these connections with Shikorae and Ryo are very present, and not only that, but it seems like there's evidence to prove that he has more than one Kagune. Even though we haven't seen, and we have not seen up to this point, Ryo activate a Kukaku or show any signs of having a Kukaku as well, because we saw the mask, it might be hinting towards the fact that not only is Shikorae present in the story of Tokyo Ghoul, but he has all 4 Kagunes. And that's something very, very interesting to know, take note of. And if it is true, with all of this being said, right, with all of this being proposed and brought out to the table, you want to ask, where does this come into play? Is there any significance into someone having all four Kagune? Well, here, I'll discuss it with you guys here. But before I kind of go into that, I did also want to say is that if this is true, that Ryo has all four Kagune, or has more than one Kagune, it's not like it would be the first time we have seen somebody with more than one Kagune, because there's a prime example, and that person is Nutcracker. Because if you remember, Nutcracker actually possessed two different types of Kagune, and we have come to find out that dependent on like your parents, if your parents are ghouls but they have different types of Kagunes, there is a slight chance that you can possess more than one Kagune, or you can get the Kagunes of both your parents and they fuse into one. Another case being Hinami, where we saw Hinami had basically the Kagune of her mother and her father, and had this very abnormal huge Kagune that she possessed. And as we can see with Nutcracker, it might have been because of both of her parents, but she possessed the Bikaku and Kokaku. So I think that is also, there's evidence to prove, there's another example that just adds the evidence to prove that Shikorae possibly has all four Kagune. Okay? Now, going back to the question, is there any significance to there being someone who has all four Kagune? And I believe that there actually is. Because as far as we know right now, besides there being four Kagune, types, being Bikaku, Rinkaku, Ukaku, and Kokaku. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing them wrong. There are also three special Kagune states. They're a bit rarer than the others, but they do classify as a state of Kagune. Those being the Kakuja, as you can see here with Arata having the Kakuja armor. There is also the ability to detach your Kagune, and your Kagune able to regenerate and create Kagune walls or Kagune bearer, kind of like what we saw Matsume do. And there are the people who can possess multiple Kagune, like Nutcracker. Okay, and also another thing to note is that each specific Kagune has different advantages over the other ones. If you remember, the Rinkaku, the Okaku, the Kokaku, and the Bikaku. So the Okaku is the one that can launch spikes, as you remember, Toka being able to do that. This one is kind of like wings. It's also very lightweight and good for swift and quick battles. You're a lot more mobile with it because it's not as heavy as the other Kagune, but it is weak against a Kagune like the Kokaku, where it's very tough and everything if they know how to wield it. There's also the Kokaku, which is tough and it's very powerful, it's very sturdy, but it is hard to wield because of its weight. But if you can wield it, then you possess a lot of strength. Remember, like Shu, with his Kokaku, it was very, very strong, and it had incredible defense. But again, it's very hard to handle because of its weight. There's also the Rinkaku, which Rinkaku users hold the highest regeneration ability, so they seem to be the ones that can regenerate the fastest and the easiest, and from almost most cases of regeneration. And they're also flexible, and they excel in brute strength. So this one's kind of more like having extra arms, or like the Dr. Octopus kind of Kagune, where your Kagune, the Rinkaku, you can not only have more than one, you can have I think it's like the max of 4. Well, as far as we've seen, it's like 4, I believe, or 4 or 8. I don't necessarily remember, but it's basically like a reflex type of thing where you can see it acts more like an arm, because it can also manipulate to become a hand or something along those lines. And then you have the Bikaku, which is the most balanced out of all of them. It's very simple. It's a singular Kagune, just one in and of itself, but it's the most balanced and it's probably the most easiest to use. So with all this evidence being presented, here's why I think that it might have some significance. There might be a user in the Tokyo Ghoul story that we might meet later on, who I presume or I believe to be the possible One-Eyed King, if there is a One-Eyed King that exists pre-Kaneki, or the leader of V, that might have all 4 Kagune, can detach his Kagune at will and regrow his Kagune, and can do a full-fledged Kakuja. Imagine everything all put together. You have high regeneration abilities. You can basically manipulate the weight of your Kagune if you want. Your Kagune are basically Kakuja, so they're incredibly, strong, and you can detach them at will. So you can set up traps, you can set up walls. You're basically incredibly broken. So I believe that maybe we have been given all this information and seeing all these ghouls, because if you think about how the story has evolved, we've just gotten more and more ghouls that have had more and more abilities, like Kaneki. How much has he changed, and how much his Kagune has changed? Eto's ability with her Kaguja goes full-fledged beast armor, and her father as well, Arata's armor as well. We've had Nutcracker, who possesses more than 2 Kagune. We have this evidence of Shikrae possibly also possessing all 4 Kagune. The amazing regeneration abilities that Kaneki has, and so on and so forth. But basically, I think that if you kind of think about it in like a shonen aspect, that you're presented all this information of like strength and everything like that, because later on in the series they end up getting this kind of strength. If you think of like One Piece and Naruto and all that stuff. But obviously this is a seinen, and it's not a shonen. But I do believe that maybe we are being presented all this information because one day there will be an opponent or a character that we meet that has everything, or a character that ends up becoming someone who has everything, like Kaneki. Maybe Kaneki ends up possessing or somehow creating all 4 Kagune and just this broken character, So is there any significance to Shikorae having all 4 Kagune? I believe so, and I believe that it is because we might see an opponent or a character that comes in the story with great influence and has all these abilities that will have to go against either our main character or someone else along the lines. And I think that also this might further help the way that society is built right now in Tokyo Ghoul, where you have humans against ghouls. Because a ghoul like this, you're basically 100% ghoul. Like, there's no human in you, at least as far as I can think of. If you have everything built into you, or you were just every single type of Kagune ghoul type of thing, So it could also further research into how humans or ghouls can control themselves and stabilize themselves to be able to be compatible with humans. And there's one more thing I wanted to talk about here with all of this being said, is that the healing. Okay, so we know that ghouls, especially with the Rinkaku types, have the ability to heal from most injuries, and it seems like a lot of them can heal, especially like the Rinkaku users can heal from crazy injuries, especially if they activate like a Kakuja type of thing, where Kaneki lost his hand, ended up growing it back, in a very deformed way, but he still growed it back, whereas humans or regular ghouls can't do that. Okay, so it's something interesting. It's something interesting to note. If this is possible, of someone having all 4 Kagune and being able to manipulate pretty much everything, there might be such a thing as an immortal ghoul. And this might be where this one-eyed king comes to play, because this one-eyed king was this one-eyed ghoul was presented to the CCG. This what created the CCG came 100 years ago. So if he's still alive and he still exists, how has he lived all this time? Maybe it's because he is able to manipulate his age. I don't know. Just presenting that, or she. It could be a girl too. I don't know. Could it be that this ghoul is quote unquote immortal? If this is possible, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.